It's a little time since I did one of these, and the first thing I'm going to talk about I don't have a prop for. Somebody contacted me to ask whether or not it was okay to translate one of my articles into Persian, I think. And I'm a huge fan of the translation of secondary works. I think it's really valuable. If you don't have access to secondary literature, it is virtually impossible to do research. So, always a good thing. Somebody wants to translate something. And if you are going to translate something, you should always contact the author and just check that they're okay with that. In general, I will always say yes to translation of an article, unless I think there's something fundamentally wrong with the article. Either it's been superseded by other work, or there's an error in it which I think, without having the later material translated that points out the errors, would make it counterproductive to actually translate it. However, contacting the author is never enough, and this was the case here. Usually, when you publish an article, the copyright to it belongs to somebody else. It belongs to a publisher, or at least they have a stake in the copyright on the article or the journal that you sent it to. And it's always the case that you need permission from that location as well. So yes, absolutely, contact me or another author if you want to translate something. But that's not the final step. You're going to then have to contact somebody else. And sometimes I can help with that. In this case, I was able to put the person in touch with the correct publisher who held the copyright, and they were able to organise directly with them. Do have props for the rest of what I got in the post. This is a book on Telangana history. It's a basic introduction looking at the coins of that region by Dr. Demi Raja Reddy, who sent me 2 books. I won't be keeping the 2 books, so this is not uncommon. I'll sometimes receive books from somebody and I will look at them and peruse them for anything that's of interest to me. But sometimes when I do that, I look at the book and I go, this would serve people better if it was in a large collection where people more interested in that specific subject could actually go. The other book, which for some reason I don't have to hand, is a numismatic bibliography. Bibliographies are really useful. This one has summaries of each of the articles that it's talking about. And in 4 of the cases, there are articles that I am interested in, but they're not written in a language that I know. They're written in Hindi, so I wouldn't be aware of them if I hadn't had the bibliography. But the 2 books that I received, they'll end up going to a large library where they will be useful to a whole range of researchers, and they're just hanging around with me at the moment until I get round to passing them on. So what else did I get? I got a bunch of books from OUP Pakistan. I got a selection of articles from around the Second World War. That's primarily of historiographic interest. I got a book on the history of SWAT. I haven't looked at this yet. It's a while since I've worked on sort of that kind of history, and I probably will take a look at it at some point, but probably when I'm kind of focusing on that area. I have read or started to read one of them. This is On Their Own Terms by Saeed, which it's an ethnographic journalistic account involving, so Saeed worked as an aid worker for NGOs in Pakistan and did a lot of interviews with women who were involved in protest movements, and the book is essentially a record of those interviews. It has that kind of what I call a PhD feel to it, which is it begins with this relatively lengthy theoretical introduction trying to set the frame for the book, and that is not good. But once the author starts to talk about their personal experience of meeting and talking with women, that bit's really interesting. So I'm about halfway through that. It's genuinely a very interesting read. You may have known this, I didn't, but OUP Pakistan is entirely separate from OUP India. This is a thing that Oxford University Press do. They have different companies with the same name that fall under a kind of umbrella, but each one works independently, making its own publications. And I didn't realise that the Pakistan branch was completely independent of the India branch and, of course, of the UK branch. Got two things that involve dye studies. A dye study by Simon Glenn on Hellenistic Bactria. It's a bit of a monster. I mean, you can see how enormous that is. It's an American Numismatic Society publication, and they like lots of white space, lots of pictures, big, thick, hardback books. I got this. I received it because it contains a dye study of Alexander, of a set of Alexander coins, which I'd seen before it was published. I haven't looked at a lot of the other material, which looks potentially interesting if you're kind of interested in Alexandrian coinage. I'm less interested in the sort of topic that ties it together, which is linked open data. I have ambiguous feelings about linked open data. Every time I've ever attended a talk or a discussion or a seminar about this sort of thing, I've come away a little bit disappointed that the people involved seem to be far more interested in the technical details, which I'm not convinced are that exciting, rather than the practical implementation of databases. Databases are phenomenally important and useful, and they've had a transformative effect on research in general and research in numismatics in particular. I've written at least 2 or 3 articles that just would have been impossible without the use of a database. In fact, the series I'm doing at the moment, talking about the coinage of the Roman Republican money Bracey, is only really possible because databases allow me to access a lot of information about coins which weren't accessible to the original author. So I'm a big fan of databases. I'm less convinced by the attention that is paid to particular trendy sort of computer science elements of it. I don't actually think that bespoke, brand new, cutting edge databases are terribly useful to a field that just doesn't really have the kind of money to maintain them. The technology that's useful is technology that's readily available and easily usable by everybody in the field, and databases should very much take advantage of that. So all of those things I was sent, which is really nice, and thank you to all of the people who sent them to me. This one I actually purchased from Amazon, and I purchased it so long ago that I'd forgotten I bought it, and it turned up in the post in January, and I've started reading it, and that kind of delay is normal. Academic works are big and complicated, and they get delayed. And this is the culmination of a lot of work. So this is a translation of what is known as the Valmiki version of the Ramayana. And it is the result of a project in the mid-20th century in India to compile a critical edition. That is to take all of the existing texts that survive and compare them and work out what the common ancestor text to them looked like and how they have changed over time. And that led to a translation of the critical edition. And if I was really, really going to have the book that I wanted, it would be the 7-volume translated critical edition, because that's the thing that's most useful to me. But it's outrageously expensive, and if I had a few £100 to blow on translation of an ancient text, it wouldn't be the number one on my list. This was cheap and inexpensive, and it's essentially the Goldmans they've done a nice little introduction that just explains some of the issues and something of the plot, and then they've taken the text of the critical edition. So imagine that as being a rough approximation of what this story looked like in the 5th, 6th century AD, in the Gupta period, and they've translated that, and they've standardized in the process their translation, because the critical edition was translated between 1984 and 2017. This is the kind of final bit, the sort of accessible, easily usable sort of basic introductory text that will allow you to then work backwards to the translation of the critical edition and the critical edition itself. And it's really interesting, and I have been reading it. You can see the bookmark is a little way in there, and Ram has just been exiled from Ayodhya, so maybe I'll do an episode talking about that at some point. Anyway, so that is what I got in the post, really during the lockdown and the end of the pandemic. So thank you for listening, and I will do another of these when I build up a little pile of more stuff that I've received.